Welcome to the Change Within podcast. My name is Gerard Uselli. We are on episode 56, and I cannot believe how much change has been impacted for so many people throughout our lifetimes. And through one guest at a time, I'm exploring the perspective of change of so many people who want to express it, who want to embrace it, and want to make sure that those changes can help aspire and inspire others to do the same. But nonetheless, we do have a new guest for this episode. Very excited to have her on. No exception to the rule as far as embracing the changes. Tara Reitz. Tara, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. It's Friday.
Absolutely. What a way to start off the enthusiasm in that regard, right?
Heck yeah. And I'm off-roading tomorrow, so.
Exactly.
Double awesome.
So pretty much going right into our questions. And of course, always the first question that I ask all of my guests is what your childhood was like growing up.
Well, first off, I just want to say I watched a few of your podcasts, and when you presented this opportunity with me, I got really excited because I really like what you're doing here, and I think it's great, and we need more of this, so keep it up. And I'm super excited and honored to be on here with you. But as far as like my childhood, that's always been an awkward, like touchy thing because I grew up in a unique childhood, but not unique to everybody. I think a lot of people struggle with a childhood that was not so perfect. But I don't really ever like to dwell or to talk about that unless it needs to be. I like to focus on the positive because I had some really cool, unique features in my childhood too. And so that's what I'd like to tell you. I literally grew up in a quarry. Like right behind my house was the quarry cliff. My house got hit with boulders. Like we'd have to evacuate. We rented it from the quarry. So let me tell you, living in a quarry, it was super awesome sledding, as you can imagine.
Ooh,
we had, go-kart racing. Like my brother and I, my lane was over a mile long, dirt lane, dump trucks drove on, and that mud can get pretty thick. Our bike trails, we had the highway and lowway, we'd race, in the dump truck trails. And then there was the old quarry had a lake, so we'd do cliff jumping. And like my favorite was like rock climbing. But it really embedded a love of like nature and the outdoors because we had no neighbors. And like when life would get hard or anything, I literally would like just crawl up to a cliff and just stare at the stars. And it was absolutely beautiful. And then my mother, she is like one of the strongest women I know. That woman can cook. Like she grew all her own crops, she'd can everything and just cook and had the most beautiful gardens. Literally, like when I served in the military, she'd send me pictures of her butterflies and birds. That's it. She tracked them. Yeah, she was a diehard. She's an amazing woman. We're best friends today. And then my dad, what was cool about him is he was a racer. And when I say a racer, he raced everything from quads to micro sprints, dirt bikes. I mean, literally my whole family did. So I grew up in the garage on the track. I was like my dad's pit crew in a sense. And I took that for granted a little bit. I wasn't really into the garage scene at that time, though I enjoyed the culture. And he taught me a lot about pursuing your passions and living for that because he never had a house. Like his passion was his life. So through all the bad stuff, I really think and the good stuff, I don't look down any of it because it made me who I am and I'm strong because of it. I have empathy and I can relate to people and I am who I am today. I don't know, but yeah.
I think that's a great way to sum that part up. And I have just a quick follow-up in that regard. Do you feel like with the sense of being around nature at such a young age and doing things like climbing up cliffs to see the stars and things of that sort, did you feel like you were more spontaneous than your peers in that way?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember this one time, like my brother and I, we would always have we were competitive, like you would not believe. And there was I could climb this. Okay, well, I could climb this. And we're just thinking, and we both said, well, we can climb that. So we climbed it. I thought we were going to die. We got stuck at the top and sat there for a good 20 minutes. And we said our goodbyes because you couldn't go down. But, so we spontaneously did things all the time. And we had woods too. It's like trails in the woods. It was awesome. And we didn't back then, come on, I grew up in the 90s. We did not have all this internet. Yeah, like it was awesome. Like the most technology we used was the stereo system I installed in my car. You know, like it was just a great time to be a child, you know? Did that answer your question?
Yes, of course it does.
Okay.
And especially on the aspect of having the car radio, just with the sense of simplicity, it gets interesting with when you have friends in the car and you feel like you could just bond off of one song, and that was the attention span of what your conversation was. And it was much more enriching compared to what it is today, when you're just literally talking points are just moving a mile a minute.
Oh yeah, for sure. Big time. Agreed.
So to fast forward a little bit more, tell me about your time serving in the military, and did you feel like it brought discipline to pursue your dreams?
Well, it's funny how you talk about spontaneous just a second ago, because I literally spontaneously joined the Army a week after I turned 17, in fact. Nobody knew, like it literally came out of the hat. I was a really bad teenager as like a result from upbringing away. Like I was invisible, didn't care, did what I want, had no regard, you know what I mean? And so like I literally got in trouble all the time. And my guidance counselor said to me one day, Tara, you're so smart. I'm like, yes, I know. She's like, do you ever think about your future? Like what you could do with it? And it was weird because you would think children naturally think of that, but they don't. And I never did. And I'm like, you know, and she's like, well, what do you like to do? I said, I like things that make me feel like an adrenaline rush, like that if I survive, it's awesome. And she looked at me and said, well, have you considered like a cop for the military? And I was like, military sounds cool. And then like, I think like the following week, yeah, I was like, that sounds kind of cool. But we had recruiters come in at lunch and I talked to the guy and I was like, sign me up. So like, you know, my mom was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. And, you know, I went into that as a child. I really was an immature child and I learned so much. Discipline for sure, but so much more, the love of our country, selflessness, service, pushing your mind, not just your body, but your mind to the extreme, you know what I mean? Like, and where you really have to learn teamwork and you become a family is the most honorable thing I ever did. And to this day, I am so proud of it. It was the best time of my life, to be honest with you, when I served. And it's just funny though, that I look back and just thought I had no plan in the world to do it. And yet, you know, it really set me up for my future too, because when I was in the military, when I came back from like boot camp, I really had a better head on my shoulders. I took that with me into the future and started making like really good life choices at that point in my time.
And then also on the aspects of being in the military, I think one of the key words that I always think of first thing coming to mind is calculation. As far as the sense of being calculated in every move that you make and making sure that the risk assessment in front of you has been well evaluated to make sure that you're able to succeed in the risk that you take as well. So I do feel like, not to say that I was fully in your shoes in that regard. However, as far as to have that sense of strategy based on the things you do want to do in your life, it does make an incredible difference as far as how you've wished to pursue things throughout.
Well, yeah, I completely agree. And honestly, and I don't want to speak for all teenagers, okay, or even adults. Something the military did with that was it gave me a confidence. It gave me like I was good at something and I could do it and I had, you know, support. And it also gave me a sense of like value, you know what I mean? Because in the military, they have strict guidelines because they value your mind, your decision making, and like you have to be a sound mind to make decisions out in the field. You know what I mean? It's really important. And the fact that they teach you that just it was great, you know.
Absolutely. Now, to go a little bit more into your passions now, but kind of in the beginning phases, do you remember the first time you rode in a Jeep and what made you keep going back for another ride?
Okay, now this one I'm going to take you on a little bit of a rabbit trail, but hang with me. I promise I'll loop back to you because I've only owned a Jeep for a little over a year. I have not ridden a Jeep prior to that. Okay, right. Nor had an interest. But it actually like in 2016, okay, I was in a pretty serious car accident. My kids were in the car, saw it coming, nothing I could do. And I didn't have a seatbelt on. And in that moment, I thought, I'm going to die. Like how fast the car came. And I actually remember the moment I was like, wow, I'm alive, and I had to, and once the kids were okay and stuff, was great. But after that, I had 9 months, well over 100 therapy appointments, doctor appointments, injuries, pain every day. And I became severely depressed, from head injury also, and suicidal even, it was just a 9 months of a terrible time. But I healed, I got out of that literally like a light switch, is what they say when you have your head injuries and everything. I started thinking like, I could have died. Like life didn't taste the same. I wanted something more. My whole life, I had kids since I was 19. So, by 24, I had 4 kids and I was married. I wanted to do something that I wanted to do, but I didn't know. So I started really thinking about that. And I loved backpacking in the military. Like it was something that I thought was so freaking fun. I know you get dirty and disgusting and stinky, but it's a huge challenge. It was so much fun and you can just see cool things. So I started prepping for that. I literally spent a year collecting all my stuff and training hardcore for it. And then my husband was like, okay, you need to sell your car. And I'm like, no, I need to buy all this backpacking stuff. And he's like, no, there's a lot of miles. You need to sell your car. What car do you want? So for the first time ever, I could shop for a car that I didn't have to have 6 people in because my kids were driving. And I was like, Jeeps can, take you into the mountains. I want a Jeep. And he's like, okay. So I test drove one and I was like, oh, this is awesome. But it was like 10,000 more than I could afford.
Yeah.
But I was like, I want this one. It was a 75th anniversary one. It was black. It was beautiful. And it drove like, oh my goodness. And he's like, yeah, no, we're not going to find a 75th anniversary one. I said, I want one and I want it in white. He's like, what? You're lucky if you find one in any color. What do you know? In Maryland, they had one and they had high mileage. We could afford it. We went down, we test drove it and like literally had a system in it. 90s, 90s child. So we bought it, took it home and I loved it. But I don't think I fully grasped the Jeep culture until COVID actually. Because once COVID hit and it gave me time to because he used to say, what do you want to modify on it? I'm like, oh, she's perfect. I want to touch her, And then I started seeing that they off-road and they do some crazy stuff like on these rocks. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then my friend started saying to name her and I'm like, what? But once I off-roaded her for the first time, I was completely hooked. And in fact, I wanted to off-road so bad. We started cutting trees down in our yard. We own an acre in the woods. And I started driving up the front of the yard up this big hill. The neighbors thought I lost my mind. And, after that, I became obsessed. I am a Jeep owner for life. I just hope I don't destroy her.
I got an interesting follow-up on that. So you were just talking about your neighbors and you were cutting down trees. They're like, what is going on with this woman doing what she's doing? And of course, we could both assume that. Now, as they've probably seen you really in the height of your action and what you've pursued, have they taken more of an interest since you've been doing that?
Because we live in the woods and we have one neighbor across the street and it's not like old days. You don't talk as much. You don't see each other. They have really young kids. And I think they're, I'm not sure what they're doing, to be honest. The neighbor guy, he's never home. And my cousin actually lives on the other side and my aunt lives across the street, but they're so far away, you can't even see each other. So, but they know, I think my family and friends were the ones, even now, they don't get it. They're like, why are you breaking your Jeep? That makes no sense. They think I'm just crazy, to be honest. Obsessed, crazy, passionate. It's a lot of fun. I can't help it.
And when you were talking about getting that truck in white, I always like to say to people, the more specific you get, the more realistic your expectations are going to be.
Oh, and I am a sucker to car buying. You can ask my husband. Car dealers hate me because I'm very specific. I don't want this color interior, but all I cared with it really was I wanted white. That was my ideal. I didn't know anything about Rubicons at the time. or lifts or any of that stuff. Thank goodness, because could you imagine me car shopping right now?
Oh
I like
boy. Yeah.
37s or 40s. I'd like a Dana 60. I'll do a Dana 44 if I have to. And, yeah, not a good idea. I'd rather build it anyway, to be honest. But
to get more specific in your branding, and I found this to be very interesting, when did the term Virago click with you to make it part of your branding itself?
oh, well, like I said, my friend Dom, okay, he was the great white. He just shut his Instagram down. He's a super great dude. He owns a surf shop. He told me I had to name my Jeep. And I like vocabulary words, weird ones. I have a Pinterest board.
Same with me.
Oh, do you? I just think it's cool. Like, it's just,
Big vocabulary nerd.
I mean, I don't remember them, but I can pull it up and learn. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's cool. And the word Virago I learned off Pinterest, to be honest. And to me, I found it so freaking encouraging and exciting. Like, it just, what it means, a Virago, there's two terms, by the way. There's the new one, the badass domineering woman. That's not what I named my Jeep after. My Jeep is the historical term, and it's a noun that was used primarily in the 13th to 16th century to describe a female warrior who her heroism and courage and battlefield skills were as equal to, if not greater than, a man. I don't care so much about the man part, but what I think is cool is it levels the playing field. You know what I mean? Like, if you were a Virago back then, you were rare and pretty badass. And I find that encouraging, and it shows like women can do anything they want just as much as a man. And I'm not saying, like, I don't say that to like say like we're not competing with men. I don't think we're competing with anybody, really. We're competing with ourselves. But I think a lot of times, like, face it, some men can run faster than me, and if we have an arm wrestling match, there, it can be pretty hard. I'm not saying like there's things that men are better at, don't get me wrong, but if a woman wants to be good at something, as good as anybody, they have a chance, they work at it and try. And I find it encouraging. And the word Virago really took me to was like growing up, I used to collect like NASCAR cards, motocross cards. I hundreds of them, so I have them. Rarely, and I don't even know if I have one, to be honest, but you rarely saw a female. When you go to the tracks, you didn't see many females, and they didn't get many big sponsors. And I think right now in this day and age, like, the women are getting attention in those fields, honestly, more than the men. Like, it's so much easier for a woman to gain followers and to get sponsors right now than a male. So it's vice versa. But it's cool just because that just shows how much everyone's coming around and supporting the females. And they're all over the place become Viragos. Just like Go Fast Girls. They're like, it's an apparel company that I'm a part of. They are so amazing because they sit there and support women of all ages and in all different motorsports. And you see these little like 5-year-olds just totally winning worlds, little girl females. And it's just neat to see. We're very supported now. We're very lucky to live in this day and age.
I think also in the retrospect of seeking empowerment, whether man or woman in this case, you look at that and look at to your own self-esteem as a person, and you think to yourself, if I have this empowerment in front of me, why am I not pursuing? And if you are long-winded about that answer, then there's something that is not clicking as far as you willing to pursue it. So I feel like once you find your passion as a person, whether that's within the realm of racing or whatever the case may be, you're able to desire for more and make yourself feel more empowered.
Exactly. And that's honestly the hard part for anybody, I think, is to find that passion. I mean, it took me till I was 37 years old.
Right.
But and I don't know. Like, I feel like it is a word of encouragement, because like, just in the off-roading world, I tell women all the time, whether you're doing green trails, red trails, whether you are rocking 40s or stock, you know what I mean? You're going to be a Virago on the trail of your choice, in the sport of your choice, in the life of your choice, and it's facing that fear and overcoming it and getting confidence in yourself. And it's very empowering, but it's very empowering too when you're inspiring. And so when I thought of that name, I wanted it to inspire not just myself, because I'm riding and I see that hood, I see it, like, it's inspiring. And the funny thing is though, when I first picked this name, people made fun of me. Like they're like, Viagra, Vertigo, like
Oh, here we
'cause
go.
no one's heard of that name. I'm serious. Like that word, like it was like, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, let me tell you. And I tell them, like, but I was like, good. I'm glad I picked that name.
Well, I'll give you a funny story to compare with. So my favorite word of all time is jubilant. And
What is it?
jubilant, as in like
Jubilant.
joyful, happy, stuff like that. So I always get the Jupiter comparison with that, just based on how the way the syllables sound and the sense of enunciating it. So they're like, "Oh wait, you like Jupiter? What planet are you on?" So it's kind of like the point of comparison. But jubilant is my favorite word.
That's a good one.
Definitely. And something to follow up on more of the mechanical aspects of cars, like what makes that interesting to you?
Again, that's like another one that's like so weird because, I told you I grew up in the garage. Okay. My dad, like the only thing I remember that I really did a few times was clean pistons. He tried because he had work to do and he wanted to entertain me, try to get me involved. We built my cars. I had no interest. A year and a half ago, I didn't even know how to put air in my tire. Like
wow.
I called for help if I had a flat, and when we off-roaded, and I literally, it was like a light switch hit and I fell in love with it in such a real way that I decided I had to learn like all these mechanics stuff. I wanted to know everything about my Jeep for a couple of reasons. One, I feel like it makes me a better wheeler. I can know what sounds are because when you come back from off-roading, I can't tell you how many times I drove to work and I heard a click or I heard something that I could say, hey, Jared, I think we have to look at our steering. We have to do this. You know what I mean? It really helps to be aware of the noises your vehicle's making and mechanics on the trail if you need to fix something. And two, I just wanted to do it. Like for the first time I wanted to know, there was this whole language and build underneath my undercarriage. I didn't know what it was, So my husband was like, okay, I'll teach you. And we blogged the whole thing from day one, which is really cool. I'm glad we did that. And it's brought us together. My husband and I, like, we have so much fun. I know he gets annoyed with me sometimes because I ask a lot of questions and like things to him that like common sense. I'm like, wait, what size is this again? Wait, is this? Or if I'm having trouble breaking open a bolt, he just wants to jump. I'm like, no, just let me keep trying. He could get the job done so much faster than me, but I really love it and enjoy it. And I think it's something too that I found like with the ladies like on Instagram that they really look up to that. And I just tell them like, you're never too young, too old to learn a new trade. Like this is something you can do, like especially changing oil. It is not hard. And if anything would ever happen to my husband, at least I have a foothold that I could do things,
Of course.
But yeah, it's all part of wheeling. See, wheeling's for the weekends.
There we go. And good way to segue into how you've continued a lot of your partnerships and having so much collaboration in your life between all these companies through your social. So being that you have so many partners on Instagram, what does collaboration mean to you?
Well, that's actually changed a bit, to be honest. When I first started and I would see these other accounts with these collaborations, like I think naturally most people want that. And that's like kind of like a goal, you know what I mean? So especially with parts being so expensive and the ladies wearing their t-shirt, it's such a temptation and a draw in. Now Instagram does that. And so that was part of my goal in working into it. And first I started with apparel and that was great and a lot of fun. And then we started getting into some big accounts like Power Tank, Nitto, Skid Row, like sponsorship stuff. And that gets even more exciting. And then all of a sudden it was like, I have so many and that's such a huge blessing. And what I look at on this, the positive point of this is when you have companies that want you to rep them, how I see it is somebody built this business. They sacrificed, they worked their butts off for it and they put their heart and soul and love into their companies. And when they ask you to be a part of it, it's a huge compliment. It makes you feel like, wow, they really like what I'm doing and they want to be a part of it. Because I view my Instagram the same way. I put a lot of time and love into it. And so it's very humbling. And so I do my best to represent them on the trail and on the gram, so it's not just on the gram. When you're interacting with people, you're still representing them. And you hear a lot of times people say, the thing that really I'm gonna address right now, is when people like, oh, they just want free stuff. It is not free stuff. Let me tell you what, when you have a sponsor or even a brand ambassadorship and you're representing them, it's basically a contract. You're marketing for them. You interact with each other. You become friends with them. I can tell you some owners and people who run these companies, I've actually met them in person. I've done tours in some of the companies. They're awesome people, and you're a part of them just like an employee. You know what I mean? So it's really not free, but it's a joint mutual, like a friendship, a partnership, and it's great. The problem with it is you got to be careful, because you don't want to take on too many at once, because it becomes a real juggling aspect. So you got to be organized, and you got to make sure you meet what they say. And the most important thing, and I'll be honest with you, is you got to have fun. Because if this isn't fun, then you're just not going to last long, because you got to enjoy it.
It's just like a sense of employment. You got to pick something that you at least get not only a sense of enjoyment out of, but also being gracious for what you have at the same time.
Amen to that. I completely agree. Yeah. And I'm super grateful. And if I could, can I just give a quick shout out?
Absolutely.
Are you okay? All right. So I totally want to thank Nitto, Power Tank, Skid Row, AWE, Jeep Herd, Jeep Beef, Revolution Race, Steal It, Adams Drive Shaft, Combat 4x4, Go Fast Girls, Not So Stock, Valkyrie, and Only in the Woods. I appreciate every single one of you guys.
And that's what a great partner does, leading by example right there. So final question, again, that I always ask every guest on my show is, what is the biggest change you want to see for yourself?
I have this one had me really thinking, because I break things down. Like I have my 1 year outlook, my 5 year outlook, like that type of thing. So I'm just gonna do a 1 year thing. Okay. But the biggest change and the thing we're figuring out right now is kind of what I just touched on a little bit, balance. I would definitely, because I love doing this. I have so much fun. I work a job though, and I have 4 kids, and so what I would really like to do is really just pinpoint and get everything in order to balance my family, my job, and this, and then maybe one day, okay, make this more of a full-time thing. You know what I mean? So I could work a little less and do this a lot bit more and just travel around, but we'll see. But balance is the first step for that, definitely.
And I think throughout every point of transition, just to conclude, as whatever changes you have in your life, whether they're great changes or not so great changes, you have to have a balancing act in your reactions and your adaptations towards them. But nonetheless, that does conclude episode 56 for the Change Within podcast. For those who want to check out the Change Within podcast but have never had a chance to, you can please check us out through Anchor, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Tara, thank you very much for joining today, and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. You too.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.